In this household, we are Team Nina. Amanda Seyfried acted hard enough to carry this on her majestic shoulders. We should thank her for that.
Nina, where are they?
Hey, what's going on?
Billy threw away my PTA notes.
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today I'm reviewing The Housemaid, a quick bit of backstory, catching you up if you're new here. In addition to my regularly scheduled programming of film reviews, I also do source material videos where I will read a book that's going to be adapted, and then I do a video about that book ahead of the film adaptation being released. I covered the first book in the Housemaid series back in January of this year, so now it's been almost a year since I read it, but now I've attended an early press screening and you're watching this review, which means the embargo has lifted, so here we are to talk about the adaptation. A lot of things have happened since I covered the source material, but for the sake of closure, dearly beloved, we're gathered here to say our goodbyes to the housemaid. She's not dead, but this is the last you'll hear me talk about her because about 90% of why I decided to still proceed and review this film is because Amanda Seyfried was cast to play Nina. She is the #1 reason why I requested to attend an early press screening. From the very beginning of this year, when I decided to cover this adaptation, the one resounding thought I had was that Amanda was going to deliver a performance that would be the best thing about the film. It would be a performance that would outshine any and every other merits the film might have, and guess what? I was entirely correct. Amanda Seyfried's performance is to die for. The Housemaid is titillating enough to satisfy fans of the genre, but any scene without Amanda immediately loses a notable amount of dramatic tension. For anyone unfamiliar, the basic non-spoiler premise of The Housemaid is that you have Millie, a young woman facing difficult life circumstances. She's applying for different jobs and does an interview to be a housemaid for the Winchester house. Nina Winchester is Amanda's character, and she's the one who interviews Millie. Her husband's name is Andrew, and her daughter's name is Cece. There is also a landscaper who works around the house, and his name is Enzo. Once Millie starts this job, tensions begin to rise, and secrets can only stay hidden for so long. I'm going to keep this first part of this review as having minimal spoilers, and then I'm going to do a medium spoiler section, which is more so intended for people who have read the book already, so there's not as much of a need to tiptoe around everything in the plot. Also, I want to be able to talk a bit about some of the comparisons between the source material and this adaptation. All of the primary characters have more to them than what you are initially shown, so it's important for the actors to be able to play their material in such a way that you can hint at the other things that are lurking beneath their surface, but you also have to keep certain things hidden for the audience that hasn't read the book or looked up plot spoilers before watching for the first time. In that regard, as I've already said, Amanda is doing the best work. She is running laps around everyone else in this movie. I would also add that Brandon Sklenar did a decent job with showing more range than what I've seen from him before this. Previously, I have seen him in It Ends With Us and Drop. And in both of those films, he was good, but this film was a better showcase of what he's capable of as a performer. Enzo is significantly downsized from what's given to the character in the book, so I don't really feel like there's much for me to say about Michele Morrone being good or bad in the role. If you blink slowly, you just might miss the fact that he's in the story at all. As for Millie, well, she's there, she's in the movie. It's difficult to effectively discuss the dynamics between Millie and Nina without giving away plot spoilers in this section, but broadly speaking, if you think about other thrillers, be they regular or erotic, there's often a lot of dramatic tension and conflict between 2 or 3 characters. Obsessed, What Lies Beneath, Single White Female, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, just to name a few other examples. And in order to maintain the tension of the story and really keep the audience at a more heightened state as they're being immersed into whatever power plays or escalations are happening among the main characters, everyone needs to be performing at or above a particular standard. There is a significant disparity between Millie and Nina in the sense that whenever Nina's gone, especially in the first third of the film where you're trying to establish the characters, story, and stakes, it's a bit like having a table and then removing one of its legs. She needs to be there for the story to perform at its highest standard. I don't usually share my scores anymore in YouTube reviews because I want people to listen and focus first and foremost on qualitative feedback instead of just hyperfixating on quantitative feedback. If it's 5 stars on a first watch, I will still share that because it's 5 stars and those are the best of the best. If I were to make a graph of watching The Housemaid where the x-axis is the minutes into the runtime and the y-axis is the score I would give, you would see peaks and valleys that are directly correlated with whether or not Nina is in the scene. All of the Nina scenes, the score shoots up. She's somewhere else, and you're focusing on other characters without her, it's going to dip, either slightly or significantly. Beyond the performances, I do want to compliment the production design. The house is the primary location of the story, and so much happens in it that it's the absolute most important location to get right. And there were some details I'm not going to talk about until we get into the next section of this review, but they were a well-designed part of the overall storytelling. Overall, I would say that this film is best recommended to fans of those sort of soapy erotic thrillers, fans of watching Amanda Seyfried act, and probably fans of the book as well. It's not an exact copy and paste of the source material, but the essence of the story is largely intact.
Why don't we go check your office?
You need to be more careful next time. You've ruined my entire day.
But now I would like to talk with medium spoilers. The main reveal and the main outcome or resolution of the story is something I won't say in full detail because this is still an early review, but we will get into some of the things that I wanted to talk about in a bit more detail. One of the opinions I didn't get into in the earlier section is whether or not the film warrants a sequel. There are 2 other books in the Housemaid series, which I also read this year in the context of just-in-case research. The ending of the Housemaid film is largely similar to how the first book ends, but being that Nina isn't in the second or third book, I don't see anything that would draw me in for adaptations of those. Considering how much less gripping and compelling the film is anytime Nina's not in the scene, there's little to suggest that those stories would be able to draw people in without her. This is the Nina Winchester show. I would much rather see director Paul Feig do a third Simple Favor film and have Amanda join that cast than I would any sort of expansion beyond the one and done Housemaid story. Getting back to the production design, one of the details that I thought was excellent, but somehow also underutilized was a very specific choice in the set decoration. If you've seen the film's trailer, you might remember that there's a point where Millie is cleaning. Specifically, she's dusting a sort of decorative chandelier that's hanging from the ceiling. One of the details of that is there are these long strands of what appear to be or heavily resemble long tresses of blonde hair. I assumed they were going to directly circle back to those and talk about them as being heinous, outrageous, absurd decorations, but they just never directly address them. I still think they're brilliant insofar as choosing to decorate the set of the house in this way, but narratively, I would have thought and hoped that we would have a conversation about them, because as soon as I laid my eyes upon them, I found them to be utterly diabolical. So diabolical that they would need to be directly called out at some point in the story. The spiral staircase and the design of it feels almost claustrophobic in a way. It's just so tightly wound, and the feeling of that is exactly what this story needs and how this setting should feel. Even with the house being as large and luxurious as it is, the staircase looks exactly how it needs to. The attic is something that I saw being discussed back when the film's trailer was first released. Essentially, people who had read the book felt as though they were surprised that the room looked so much nicer when Nina is first showing the room to Millie than how it was described when Millie first moved in. I think that to have the attic look immediately scary, suspicious, or threatening would cause problems with the uninitiated audience who hasn't read the book. If you make the attic look like a problem, they're going to struggle to believe or invest in the emotional or narrative stakes of the story, because why would you accept a job that requires you to move in somewhere that looks like a red flag? Yes, Millie is in a predicament, and that desperation is a motivating factor for how she behaves, some of the choices she makes in either version of this story, but also, the film is overall presenting something that seems idyllic, and then as you make your way through the story, the layers begin to get peeled back so you can uncover what's really going on and what secrets characters are trying to keep hidden. The attic is part of that larger creative vision for this adaptation. I wanted to mention the soundtrack, briefly. There is an absolutely fabulous Nina moment that was soundtracked with a song that I was beyond delighted to hear. You will know it when you hear it. More of that, please. More songs from that album in movies being made today. Please and thank you. With this being an adaptation of a book, I wasn't all that picky about how close or faithful it would be to the book. The essence of the story is largely the same, although many details were slightly altered. The one change that I found to be more surprising is one that happens in the second half of the film. I'm not going to say what it is, and I'm casting a wide net of when it takes place, but all I will state about this change is that it was one that I enjoyed because of the space that it created for Nina to be able to do something that was different from the source material. As it stands now, The Housemaid is mixed in its execution. Had this story been reworked in such a way to not follow the book as closely as it does, it might have landed better as a film in its totality, given the revelations that come about Millie's character further into the film or the book. The truth about her character and what she's capable of don't quite land as well as it should because of the lack of dramatic tension in her performance leading up to those reveals. Watching Millie wander through this story before then gives off more of an impression that she's doing exactly that, wandering aimlessly. In order for her arc to feel earned, there needs to be something deeper to ground the character, something that the audience can feel so that those character revelations can effectively land when they are revealed in the story. If this was going to be the casting, the story would have been better off being reworked to expand its focus to be first and foremost on Nina. If you've read the book, you know that there is an alternating point of view. You have the first chunk that follows Millie's point of view, the second chunk that follows Nina's point of view, and then the third chunk of the story switches back between the two. The film largely follows that same structure, which is a problem when one of your leads is performing the material with a similar range to Enzo, a character whose story has been downsized so significantly that he's hardly in the film at all. Despite the disparity between the two main characters, the second act is more or less the primary reason to watch this film, if you're wanting to watch the film, that is. Upon reading the book, I favored the third part. If you've read the book, you will know exactly why that is. But because of the fact that Nina is the best part of the film, and the second part is basically all Nina, it's the most consistently watchable part. Overall, to reiterate, if there's any reason for you to watch this, it's Amanda's performance. Watching her devour every bit of material she was given in this has further increased my anticipation for The Testament of Anne Lee. I don't know yet if I will end up reviewing that on YouTube because I'm not sure yet when it will release in cinemas for me to be able to watch it, but either way, I will be watching it.